Alright, so I'm going to demonstrate the drift bug right now. So I'm going to do a long drift right now. Now I'm going to release this drift and it's most likely not going to stack. Okay, see? Now it's already dropping my speed down to 570 before I finish this turn. See that? So basically what happens is it didn't exactly fully merge, but what it did was it just sustained the meter for like 1 second before it started dropping. So it's some kind of either glitch or some kind of handicap where if you stack so many drifts back to back that it has a tendency to either merge it or it just doesn't sustain as long. But most of the time when you release a big drift and then a small drift right after, that small drift either completely gets nullified and merges into the same timer of the previous big drift, or it just sustains for a moment and then just drops. So that is the main issue with drift bug, because normally when you release a drift, they're supposed to give you the speed boost and it's supposed to last for 3 seconds at a time on its own timer. But it seems that when you release, it's more common that when you release a big drift and then do a small drift, it's supposed to stack onto its own timer. But the problem is it has a higher chance of just completely nullifying that smaller drift and merging it into the same timer, or just basically doing nothing at all. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate how to counter it. So what you do is you do a smaller drift first, so release it earlier right here, and then do your long one, and when you see the speed dropping, then you release it. See, now I'm going around this turn at a higher speed, and I can even do a turbo right before I come out of it. Okay, that's usually what I do. I've had a race where I was toe-to-toe with somebody, and then on lap 3, my opponent, he messed up and released his drift too early. He released that previous drift late, and then the second one a little too early, and he lost all his speed and was going around that roundabout at 570 kph while I sustained my 700 kph plus speed. And I ended up winning that race because of that, because he probably would have beat me. I thought he was a little bit better than me, but he messed up on lap 3, and that's what did it. So drift bug is really something that you really got to kind of know about. And it happens a lot when you're set in a route, and that's like I guess you could say like an ideal or fast route, and you mess up where you don't control how often you or where you release your drifts and such. Okay, so you got to make sure that when you do a drift like that where you're going to stack drifts, if you're going to go around a long turn, the two drifts before that, make sure the first one is smaller and the second one is the bigger one before releasing and then going around a turn. Okay, that is something that you need to keep note of, especially on certain maps. I'm going to show you another map to demonstrate the speed bug, because it'll most likely be more noticeable on the next map versus this one. Okay. Alright guys, so this map is called Outpost. I'm going to demonstrate where the drift bug is on this one. It's right after the up ramp. So what's going to happen is right here. See, so I'm going to go up here, I release a drift, I drift left, I side flip, I land, I release my drift. See, watch, see my speed is dropping all the way down to 570. I didn't get the full speed. So basically what happened was, there's two ways why it happens. You're either, so when I released that second drift, I've released the first drift up on that up ramp, okay, and then when I went over the edge of the up ramp, when I was drifting left and I side flipped and landed, I released my drift and that meter didn't stack. It just kind of merged with the timer and just dropped all the way down to 570. It didn't sustain for long at all. So I need to do one of two things. Either I need to release the drift, I need to release the previous drift before the one on the ramp. I need to release that previous drift a little bit early before starting the drift on the ramp. So when I side flip and land, I can release it and get the speed boost to go around. Or I need to create a delay. So I'm going to demonstrate how to prevent it on the next demo. Okay, so going around again a second time to demonstrate this is how you prevent it. So I end up going over that up ramp off the opposite direction. So first I drift left, then right to face the opposite. I air dodge down, jump side flip. See, that gave me the delay I needed where I can actually release my drift later and go up around that shortcut at 700 kph plus, okay? because that is actually what you want to do. If you're going around at 570, you're going around slower than you should be. All right. So just kind of take note of that certain parts of certain maps, you really got to kind of analyze your route, how you go about it, so that way you can make sure that you get the most of your speed and stay out of the 570 range as much as possible. Okay. So the first cut, when I first did the cut, I released it just a little bit too early, and it's too easy to release it early without delaying by chain drifting the other way, but then you're overly delaying when releasing, and you're going to be sitting at 570 about maybe a half a second longer, when you really need to time it where when your speed is starting to drop, and it's a pretty decent sized drift, that is a time when you can release it. All right, so you kind of got to gauge the timing, because if you don't do it right and your timing is off, you're going to lose that second drift when it merges into the first one. The first one just basically grabs it, combines it, and just drops it down. So I just kind of demonstrated that just so you can kind of see. So I had to make all adjustments to my route so then I could prevent that from happening, and that's where I did improve a little bit on my speed as a whole, because I started trying to counter that issue with drift bug. It's debatable what causes it, but a lot of times drift bug usually happens if you release a big drift and then release a small one after. The smaller one just gets eaten up by the bigger one. So you kind of got to gauge your timing, that if you're gonna release a big drift and two drifts back to back, you want the first one to be a little bit smaller, or at least released a little bit earlier, and then the second one gets released a little bit later, or it has to be at least bigger than the first one. Okay, so that's the rule of thumb, but that's just something you just have to learn and pay attention to with experience. All right, so there is another reason why you got to watch that KPH, because if you see your speed drop, you most likely did something wrong. All right, now that should conclude this part, and now we're going to go on to something else.